was just one day, about 2 blocks from where we are now, where I went to school. There was a playground in the back, and it was like recess time, and we went out and we got high.
Smoking pot wasn't anything 12-year-old Lee Vosel planned on or even thought about. But the first time he got stoned, he was hooked.
I knew that, obviously something wasn't right by doing it, but it numbed the pain that I had already experienced in life.
Much of that pain came from watching his younger brother suffer from muscular dystrophy. And while his parents spent most of their time caring for his brother, Lee was on his own partying with friends. Then, at 14, he started selling drugs.
By 15 or 16, I was making more money than my mom and dad were working 2 full-time jobs. I thought I was invincible. I thought that, I had cars, I had girlfriends, I had money, I had drugs. I was great.
His parents had their suspicions, but all of their attention was focused on caring for his brother, so they just looked the other way. Meanwhile, Lee's drug use was getting worse. Now it wasn't about masking the pain, it was about getting high.
Everything escalated from that point. It went into cocaine. It went into crack cocaine, where sometimes I would smoke crack cocaine for 12 days straight, spend $20,000 and just get high the entire time.
Then he started using a more expensive and even more addictive drug.
And then the last 3 years, I wind up IV using it. So I used the needle. I would use 50 bags of heroin every day for the final 3 years. So that's $500 every single day. I just didn't care about anybody else but myself, including, my family. My brother had passed away at that point. My mom and dad got divorced. So I was pretty much, reckless.
But it didn't stop there. Lee ran out of money feeding his addiction, and now he feared for his life.
I owed the drug dealer so much money that I was not able to get any more drugs to sell and make more money. So by this time, I was so far in debt, I was scared that somebody was going to kill me, that I had to pretty much hide out.
He ended up living in an abandoned house in town. He survived on money he borrowed from his mom.
I was so exhausted physically and mentally, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it anymore. And I knew at that point that there was something different that I wanted. I just wasn't sure how I could get out of the lifestyle that I was living.
Lee tried drug rehab 10 different times, but it never helped. Finally, his mother convinced him to enter a Christian-based recovery program called Hope Home. There he met Brian Bolt, a pastor and former drug addict.
Yeah, when I first met Lee definitely was struggling in life, and Lee definitely didn't want anything to do with God.
Pastor Brian took Lee to the recovery home and sent him upstairs to unpack his clothes. He didn't know Lee had a stash of heroin.
I heard this loud thud. I heard people say, "Pastor, Pastor, come upstairs." Ran upstairs. Lee's laying on the ground, and at that time he's purple, and I see a needle and an empty bag of heroin next to him. And I told the guys, call 911. I could tell he just overdosed on a bag of heroin. And I could tell he wasn't breathing. And I just began to pray. I didn't really know what to do because I knew this man wasn't right with Jesus. One of the paramedics said this, and I'll never forget it. This man's been dead for 30 to 40 minutes. We're gonna make one last attempt to revive his life.
Paramedics injected Lee with Narcan, a drug used to offset a heroin overdose. And it worked. When Lee arrived at the hospital, Pastor Brian was waiting.
I said, Lee, you were dead. And I said, we are all dead in our sins before Christ, but when we have Christ, we have life and life abundantly.
This day, I confessed to Jesus with my heart and my mouth and said, I can't do this anymore. I need you. And immediately, he came into my life and delivered me from a 26-year addiction instantaneously.
The next day, Lee was on a train to California headed to another recovery home called Victory House. He lived there for 16 months and saw how Jesus Christ was making him into a new person.
I was there maybe a week, and the guy next to the bunk and me, and I said, man, I'm starting to feel something on the inside. He said, well, if it's on the inside, it must be Jesus. I said, I like this Jesus thing, you know what I mean? Because it was like a high that I didn't have to get high, that wasn't like harming my body.
Since then, Lee hasn't touched a single drug. He's now married, and he and his wife, Julia, have a son named Titus. He's thankful to God for his family, his life, and his freedom from addiction that came through Jesus Christ.
That day, I no longer wanted to live the way that I lived before. It happened so suddenly. I mean, it was just one simple sentence, and everything has changed forever. I know what Christ did in my life, and it's simple. And knowing that, I know he could do it for another individual as well. Yeah.